Who knew the adventures of an undersea sponge and his friends could mess with your psyche so much? From nightmares to hallucinations and straight-up ghost hauntings, the world of SpongeBob Squarepants has been filled with some pretty trippy moments. So get ready to dive in and make sure you stick around for some of the newer seasons of SpongeBob, which feature some of the trippiest and psychedelic moments ever featured on the show. When Squidward is forced to share a locker with SpongeBob at work, the man becomes downright obsessed and paranoid that the sponge is gonna get his little yellow fingers all over his precious clarinet. His mind goes into a frazzle as he enters Clarinetland, filled with all types of visuals that will have you questioning what in the world did you just watch? The most bizarre moment has to be the giant bald eagle head, especially considering they all live under the ocean. And here's the kicker. The episode reveals all of these scenes took place in Squidward's head. He was merely sitting inside of the locker the whole time. Somebody really needs to buy him a clarinet case with a lock. Feeling like an episode of The Twilight Zone and featuring a twist ending to boot, the episode Gone features the premise of SpongeBob waking up and realizing everyone in Bikini Bottom is literally gone. Instead of trying to solve the mystery or contact the outside world, SpongeBob does the next best thing, role plays the whole town. In a creepy moment when you really overanalyze it, SpongeBob transforms his body into several Bikini Bottom citizens, including Squidward and Mr. Krabs. He really goes off the deep end, having conversations with himself and transforming back and forth just to deliver lines. The whole thing feels like a long nightmare until everyone returns to Bikini Bottom, revealing they were on a secret break from the yellow sponge. Sandy has only seemed to get smarter over the years. Her inventions are more impressive, but there's one we wish she never developed: her teleportation machine. In the episode SquidBob Tentacle Pants, SpongeBob uses the machine to travel to Krusty Krab, but accidentally fuses bodies with Squidward. For a majority of the episode, Squidward and SpongeBob have their bodies mixed and mashed in all types of different positions. Things get even worse at the end when we witness a visual of Squidward infused with Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Mrs. Puff, SpongeBob, and Patrick, among others. The visuals in this episode were definitely a sight to see, and Squidward's worst nightmare. Some episodes of SpongeBob Squarepants stand out on their own. There's no way they could fit into the canon of the show, and the bizarre endings are just too much. One of the main examples of this is the episode Hinge. The season 5 episode sends SpongeBob to the future, where he grows a full-sized beard. The plot is a little confusing, and the ending is a big old pile of what did I just watch? After SpongeBob discovers he's living in the far future and the Krusty Krab is long closed and half buried in sand, the show jumps ahead another 3,000 years into the future, where a group of aliens discover the Spongehenge statues and admire them much like we admire the real Stonehenge. After years and years of SpongeBob Squarepants, the show finally gave our title character something we thought he'd have all along: an imaginary friend. Except the giant hamster, Cuddly Hugs, was downright creepy, and the whole episode is just a big build-up to his big transformation into a haunting nightmare. During some of the final minutes of the episode, Cuddly Hugs goes full bad hamster at the Krusty Krab and starts shoving all of SpongeBob's friends down his giant hamster mouth. We all know the Krusty Krab charges a lot for a burger, but this guy didn't even have to resort to swallowing characters whole. Thankfully, the ordeal was just a part of SpongeBob's imagination, but Cuddly Hugs is pretty much at a Five Nights at Freddy's nightmare level. Sometimes it feels like the SpongeBob writers and the animators create episodes just to freak us out and get as trippy as possible. Case in point, Face Freeze. The show turns the innocent act of making silly faces into a non-stop barrage of nightmare fuel and grotesque visuals. We can just imagine the animators thinking of the most disturbing ways to draw each of the characters and then showcase them all in a single episode. Things reach their peak when SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs all get their faces stuck in positions with grotesque looks and features pretty much burned into our corneas. We watch it now and may laugh a little, but imagine being a 6-year-old boy watching this episode right before they go to sleep at night. Yikes. SpongeBob may not be able to drive, but in the episode Code Yellow, we learn he has some pretty surprising skills as a doctor. In a series of mishaps, SpongeBob was merely visiting Squidward at the hospital to support him during his nose job, gets mistaken as a doctor, and then helps multiple patients along the way. And of course, SpongeBob's last patient ends up being Squidward, and you can just imagine the results when SpongeBob is elected to complete Squidward's nose surgery. The trippiest part of the episode comes when we see a close-up of Squidward's nose post-surgery, and all of the boils, bumps, and nasty details that have been added to it. Clearly, the episode is a warning about plastic surgery and a showcase of how gross noses can get. You want trippy? You got trippy with the episode Krabby Patty Creature Feature. The plot follows the ho-hum story of Sandy the squirrel developing a special Krabby Patty, only to reveal that anyone who eats one gets turned into a slow-moving zombie. The zombie attack scenes can make you uncomfortable as SpongeBob tries to avoid the horde, and we witness the mutated looks of bikini-bottom characters like Patrick and Mrs. Puff. The characters all look like they melted as they walk around the Krabby Patty aimlessly. Sandy even transforms, bursting through the Krusty Krab server window in an attempt to attack SpongeBob. The whole thing feels like a never-ending story, but thankfully SpongeBob enlists the help of Plankton to stop the madness. Thanks to the Toy Story franchise, we've seen some scary versions of toys, including Sid's Mutants, Big Baby, and the dummies from Toy Story 4. But the episode Toy Store of Doom will make you a little happy Toys R Us closed up all of their doors. In the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick decide to stay inside the toy store after it closes. When the flashlight batteries in Patrick's brain die, the two are stuck in the dark, and the happy toys they saw during the day don't end up being the same friendly products at night. Everywhere SpongeBob turns, he sees a terrifying toy, which puts him on a high alert and completely changes the fun-filled adventure the duo thought they had in store. You would think for someone as bored and miserable as Squidward that he would enjoy some rest and relaxation, but it's the complete opposite. In the episode Squid's Day Off, the poor guy practically tortures himself, worrying about SpongeBob manning the Krusty Krab register. Things get so out of hand that Squidward actually locks himself in his own house, getting a little manic in the process as we see a crazed look on the character we've never seen before and will probably never forget. The bloodshot eyes remain for the episode, showcasing just how important routine is for the squid, who literally puts himself through misery on his single day off. After Mr. Krabs discovers how good jelly tastes on a Krabby Patty, he sends SpongeBob out to hunt down as many jellyfish as he can to farm out the jelly. Naturally, these jellyfish weren't too happy about being captured, and SpongeBob learned the hard way when he gets haunted by one in his own home. The scenes of the jellyfish haunting SpongeBob are suspenseful, surreal, and prevented a lot of us from ever wanting to hunt real jellyfish in the wild. Eventually, SpongeBob gets captured in a jar, but instead of getting spread on a sandwich, the blue jellyfish brings him to the horrific factory Mr. Krabs has been running to extract the jelly. Jellyfish stings are scary enough, but having them hunt you down is a whole different ballgame. Mr. Krabs literally follows no labor laws, working his employees to the bone, and usually with very little complaints along the way. Just look at the episode Fear of a Krabby Patty. In the episode, SpongeBob is forced to work 43 days in a row, making thousands of Krabby Patties. After the 43rd day, it's all become too much for SpongeBob. Literally everyone he sees and interacts with becomes giant forms of Krabby Patties, turning his everyday life into a hallucinogenic nightmare. SpongeBob cannot escape these giant patties, who only seem to multiply by the second and flap their tap bun when they start to speak. The nightmare state feels never-ending, and it's only natural after working day in and day out making patties. When Squidward wants to find a place to relax and play his clarinet, the only quiet location he can discover is the Krabby Patty freezer. Well, this turns out to be a huge mistake, as he gets thrust into the future and through multiple dimensions as we go on a journey with him. Squidward meets a group of SpongeBob clones, a two-headed Patrick, and eventually goes back in time to meet the caveman versions of the characters. Basically, you want to be completely sober when watching this time travel mess of an episode. There's even a point where Squidward ends up in an empty void, all alone and with words zooming by him. Good luck trying to piece this all together. The episode SB129 feels like a mishmash of late-night ideas that the crew decided to just roll with the next morning. After so many seasons, it's probably hard for the new SpongeBob production staff to come up with new ideas. So when someone shouted out, "Why doesn't the Flying Dutchman move in with SpongeBob?" everyone just kind of nodded and started doodling away. The end result is a trippy haunting scene that may not have impacted SpongeBob because he got used to the Flying Dutchman's scares pretty quickly, but it definitely disturbs us as viewers. The Dutchman grows into a monster-sized form and begins peeling layers away to reveal various scares, including a giant bug and ghost monster. We have to say the scariest and most bizarre is the worm baby. That would be the point we evicted the Flying Dutchman, Toronto. We already saw how crazed a Squidward can get with a day off, but what would happen if SpongeBob was forced to go on a work vacation? Well, that's exactly what happened in the episode Bummer Vacation. Just like Squidward, SpongeBob was unable to handle all of the time off, and he went off the deep end because of it. Things didn't get any easier when Patrick took over as the fry cook, and SpongeBob spent hours ranting and waiting for Patrick to come back home. This is where we see SpongeBob in one of his most delirious states, pulling out the best with similar vibes as characters like Jack from The Shining or Norman Bates in Psycho. The head twist is just the beginning, as SpongeBob seems to have a true breakdown in Patrick's home. On the surface, the Gift of Gum episode seems like some quirky fun when Patrick gifts SpongeBob with a giant ball of chewed gum. All is well and good until we find out what is actually inside the gumball. There's a ton of items, actual people, and at one point, SpongeBob discovers a pair of underwear? A funny and gross gag great for the children, right? Wrong. The underwear somehow crawls up to SpongeBob and speaks to him, telling him that he's not Patrick. What in the world did we just watch? A moving and talking pair of underwear that's escaped a giant chewed bubblegum ball. That's what. SpongeBob has always been known for their close-up gags and gross details with paintings and drawings on the show. We already showed you the close-up of Squidward's nose a little earlier. Well, now we're about to dive in on one of the more popular SpongeBob memes and his trippiest appearance on the cartoon. In the episode Who Bob What Pants, we see a highly detailed sponge with messed up body parts, drool, and some very dirty teeth. The long fingernails don't help much either. The freeze frame stays on the screen for far too long and makes you think twice about how you look at SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs is so money hungry, he would do anything to ensure he had every last customer at his business. So this is why in Plankton's Regular, he tries to use SpongeBob to woo the Chum Bucket's only fan over to the Krusty Krab. At one point, SpongeBob lays flat on the ground and tries to surprise the guy with a Krabby Patty. The man passes, pulls the Chum Bucket door open, and the bottom of the door literally scrapes SpongeBob's face off. When he sits up, the skin slides down and all of his internal organs are revealed. A completely unexpected moment in another episode featuring the battle between Plankton and Mr. Krabs. When SpongeBob becomes rich, all of the money goes to his head, and he clearly has no clue how to manage it all. In a moment, he discovers the money is all gone, and we have to deal with a panic-induced search through his massive home for even more dough. The sweaty, tear-filled, shriveled-up reaction SpongeBob has when he realizes all of his money is gone is a pretty detailed shot that really stands out in the episode. And as weird and strange the look is, we can all relate as we push the overdraft limit just a few more days before our next paycheck is scheduled to pop into our accounts. The animators at SpongeBob Squarepants have done some crazy things with the bodies of characters over the years. When it comes to Sandy the Squirrel, we've seen her shred her fur on more than one occasion, but nothing like the extended moments in the episode Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. As Plankton schemes once again to steal the Krabby Patty formula, he decides to take Sandy's body of fur and turn into a walking robot. Seeing the squirrel fur walk around with empty holes for the eyes and mouth is pretty creepy, and this isn't just a quick gag. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy features the squirrel skin for a majority of the episode, and even though we know it's Plankton on the inside, it's still pretty surreal. For some reason, the endless battles between Mr. Krabs and Plankton has resulted in some of the trippiest moments, and this isn't even the last one yet, but it's still a good one. Mr. Krabs' newest scheme to top Plankton is by using his daughter to eat the little creature. Naturally, Plankton has some major fears when it comes to dealing with a giant and hungry whale, and these fears manifest into a wacky nightmare scene. In the scene, Plankton is chased down and swallowed by Pearl. He lands in some stomach acid and is greeted by the rest of his Plankton family. When he steps out of the stomach acid, half of his body has rotted away, revealing a skeleton bottom. Plankton is not the only victim though. In the episode Flanton Paranoia, Mr. Krabs is the one fearing Plankton, going so far as to ban everyone from the Krusty Krab. This is where the hallucinations begin. Mr. Krabs sees Plankton everywhere, transforming from furniture, popping out where he least expects it, and even replacing his own eyeballs while looking in the mirror. The whole sequence is completely bonkers, and if you truly analyze it, you can see how easily it would traumatize a child. Naturally, Mr. Krabs comes to his senses, and the Krusty Krab goes back to normal by the time the next episode airs. Anyone trying to go to sleep and have a good night's rest should probably avoid in Spongiac altogether. The whole episode revolves around SpongeBob's inability to sleep, and his living nightmare is a true horror show. The animators must have been going through some insomnia themselves when planning this one out. There's a giant Mr. Krabs with mustard dispensers replacing his eyes, jumping monsters, multiple Squidward clones, and a creepy giant version of Patrick. Yeah, so even if you're able to fall asleep while watching, your dreams probably won't be too pleasant. The whole thing was a mishmash of crazy visuals that truly represented SpongeBob's sleep-deprived state. One of the most random and oddest episodes of SpongeBob is to save a squirrel. SpongeBob and Patrick get lost and end up in a cave together with an elderly man. Well, the lack of food and hopelessness has SpongeBob get a little demented, building a Krusty Krab out of dirt and then hiding inside of it. The whole episode makes us as viewers feel trapped, and the surreal nature of the situation is a little too stressful, even for a cartoon. The ending where the old man reveals themselves to be Sandy the whole time is just as bizarre as the 10 minutes that came before it. Seriously, it's a lot to process this episode all in one sitting. We feel ya, SpongeBob. After over 20 years of SpongeBob Squarepants, we are still learning things about the main characters, including the episode Ink Lemonade. In the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick decide to start selling lemonade, made exclusively from Squidward's own ink. They discover the best and fastest way to get him to ink is by scaring the crap out of him, and they do this in some of the most absurd ways possible. Patrick peels the skin up on his body, revealing his inner organs. He sends a giant spider into Squidward's house, and then he transforms his whole room into something that feels like it came straight out of The Conjuring. Let's hope he got some royalties for all of the ink they managed to scare out of him. Yeah, that's a whole lot to take in, especially when it's all back to back. What episode was your favorite? Any of them too random or weird? Which one scared you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to ScreenRant for more great content. Thanks for watching.